Thank you all for coming. This is facilitating collaboration, the role of crime analysis in advancing regional information sharing. This is the story of the Blacksburg Police Department and how they went from a small police department that had no analytical capacity to serving as a regional intelligence hub. They've integrated the surrounding agencies' RMS and CAD data, and they've set up automated analytics that allow the one analyst there to effectively serve as an analyst for multiple agencies at once. None of this was done using a vendor's product that you're going to hear about. None of this was done with big capital investment. I do want to give one quick disclaimer about the presentation. You'll notice that there is a phone right there that is recording. It is recording this way, and it's only recording us. And you'll notice that all four of us have these little blue microphones on. So it should only be picking up our audio. So none of you should be being recorded right now, but if you're uncomfortable with recording going on in the room, just wanted to make you aware. My name is Charlie Gibberti. My background, I started off as a police officer. I was a police officer in Panama City Beach, Florida. Anyone ever do spring break? Panhandle, Florida? Yeah, there's always a couple people with little sly grins when I bring that up. Yep, that's where I started off as a police officer. Loved being a cop, wrecked a police car in the Gulf of Mexico, not once but twice. I think that's still a record. I left there to become a crime analyst for the city of Cincinnati. Tried grad school thing for a while, wasn't really for me. But I started working for the Cincinnati Police Department, mostly as an intelligence analyst in their NIBIN unit. Over time, I started automating some of their BI processes and started presenting weekly CompStat presentations, doing financial intelligence. I went to the city of Wichita to take a supervisory analyst position, stood up a new analytic unit there, and that's when I transitioned into the private sector. So today I work for a company called Research Innovations Incorporated. We create custom analytic solutions mostly for the Department of Justice. So the software that I create is called MSAS. It is for the MLARS division of the DOJ, the Money Laundering and Asset Recovery section. Somewhere along that journey, I ran into Amanda at a conference. Amanda is a full-time employee for CNA, and she roped me into being a contractor, and so my role was somewhat part-time on this project.
So my name is Amanda Bruner, and I am a crime analysis advisor for the CNA Corporation. Prior to joining CNA, I started the crime analysis program for the Matthews Police Department, which is a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. In my current role as a crime analysis advisor, I support about 24 law enforcement agencies across the United States by providing crime analysis training and technical assistance through Public Safety Partnership, Project Safe Neighborhoods, and the Crime Analyst in Residence program. Outside of CNA, I teach crime analysis for Radford University and UNC Charlotte, and I'm the outgoing president of the Carolinas Crime Analysis Association.
My name is Courtney. I'm the crime analyst for Blacksburg Police Department. I was originally hired 6 years ago by Blacksburg as a PLA, a public liaison assistant, which works in our fusion center. And I say it with quotes because we're not a nationally recognized fusion center, nor are we living up to the capabilities that we have there, but we're working on it. But about 2.5, 3 years ago, I was reassigned as the crime analyst. The single crime analyst that is kind of supporting 7 to 8 agencies at the moment that we'll get into. And I am currently obtaining my master's at Radford University, which we'll see if it's a go or a mistake. We'll find out. Time will tell.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Heather Perez, and I am the project director on the Crime Analyst in Residence program, which we'll cover just a little bit. It's how Blacksburg got started with where they are at the moment. Very fortunate to have started the program up. I'll go into a little bit more about how kind of it's BJA's first investment in it. In another role that I do, I've worked on Project Safe Neighborhoods, open air drug markets, opiate crisis, lots of things along those lines for almost the last 25 years through Michigan State University. So.
All right, so with that, this is an outline of today's presentation. If you scan that QR code, it will open up into the Canva presentation so you can follow along with those slides. They will be available after the presentation. It has our contact information and so forth in there, so we do recommend you scan that. But essentially today we're going to talk about our problem statement, kind of what laid the foundation for this project. We'll do an overview of Blacksburg's case study of how they went from limited analytical capacity to being a regional information hub. We'll also demonstrate some of the tools that they have and some of the automated analytical workflows, and then we'll finish up with a leadership roadmap and how to assess your current analytical capacity. All right, so this is a map. It's a little bit outdated at this point, but the takeaway here is that we are very fortunate enough in our role to be able to travel to a number of agencies across the United States. And typically when we're working with agencies, a lot of the same issues occur. Data access, issues with RMS, issues capturing fields in CAD, and so forth. And so we've been fortunate enough to work with all of these agencies, but along the way, we started to identify some of the same similar trends. And one of those primary trends is how analysts are taking hours of their work week, trying to extract data from the system, clean that data, and then produce even very simple crime statistic reports, call for service reports, and so forth. And so our goal is really to help agencies streamline that process and institute automated analytical workflows.
So we get about 2 years into this program. Amanda and I, Ali Rojak, Christian Peterson, a couple other SMEs for these various grant programs, not only CAR, but PSP, PSN, some of the other big ones, started having some conversations, and we realized that for as much as we talk about the policing world being very different, thinking about like a university police department from a big city police department to a highway patrol and how they're also very different. In reality, we started to run into the exact same situation pretty much everywhere we went. And a lot of this came down to what the analysts were capable of doing. And so some of that comes from how we train analysts, the academic programs that they come from, how we select analysts, how we set them up for success or failure. And so we started collecting some data as we went around to different analytical events. And so we started surveying analysts. And one of the things that we started to ask about was automation skills. And the reason that we start there with automation is because if you can't do regional information sharing without doing automation first. If everything is manual in your department and you have this much data and it takes you 12 hours, if we just start dumping more agencies' data on your lap, the time it's going to take you to do anything is going to grow. So before you can systematically share information, you have to be able to systematically analyze your own information. So we started talking to crime analysts and we asked them, do you have any ability to automate a product? About 62% said that they have no automation skills at all. So if you're in this room, if you're an analyst, if you're working in a police department that has an analyst in it, chances are your analyst is doing things really manually, it's really time consuming. But then we've kind of noticed in the past couple of years, especially with the advent of Power BI, that sort of the BI side of the house, the numbers, the stats, that's improved a little bit. So we wanted to start talking very specifically about other workflows that crime analysts very often do, mapping and intelligence specifically. So we asked them, when you take BI out of the equation, and you're just talking about automating mapping processes using ArcPro, QGIS, whatever, only about 5% said that they could automate that. So if you're asking your analyst to create you a crime map, 95% of the time, that's going to be something that's very manual and time consuming. When we look at intelligence products, and specifically we ask about like offender workups, tell me everything we know about John Smith, or link charts. Whenever you want to link analyze an event or call detail records or whatever, only 7% said that they have the skills to actually automate those tasks. Really what this comes down to is a couple of things, but I think maybe the key piece here is a lack of SQL knowledge. So SQL is, if I was in a room full of like actual computer science people and I called it a coding language, there'd be like hands flying up, they'd be like, actually it's not. SQL is a really simplistic language that allows you to interact with databases. And so if you have a vendor that like lets you run a query, you'd be like, yeah, I'll look up a thing. Chances are when you're going through the front end of that interface, what you're actually doing is running a SQL query. Well, we know that vendors can only give you so many ways to access your data, and so very oftentimes that's very limited. So if you're able to write your own queries, that is the basis of everything that you're going to see today. But 60% of analysts don't have the skill set to do that. And then we ask, how many of you even have back-end access to your data to begin with? Because this is one of the biggest problems we run into when we go into a police department and we say we want to set up some of these things. There's almost always somebody in the IT department who puts the band hammer down and becomes a giant obstacle. But I think that it's really interesting that 60% say they can't write a SQL query, but almost 40% say they don't even have access to the data. This raises the question, is this a chicken or an egg situation? Do you not have access to the data because you don't have the skill set to actually utilize that? Or is somebody in leadership not advocating for you to get the access that you need to be successful? We don't really have enough data to answer that question, but we thought it was interesting. So we started identifying these recurring problems. And so we would go into these agencies and we'd say, hey, we're the CAR program, we're here to help. And we'd start talking about automation. And we started hearing all of these different I don't know, catchphrases, all these different cutoffs, these recurring themes from police leadership about the nature of automation and data sharing specifically. Automation requires expensive software. That is not true. Everything that you're going to see today, I think we spent a grand total of like $80. It's all Microsoft Office. I think we do a little bit of Esri stuff, but other than that, nothing particularly that's going to break the bank. Our RMS vendor can automate our analytics. Are there any RMS vendors in the house? Oh, damn it, there's one. All right, well, I'll tone it down then.
That's okay, you can do what you need to.
Okay, cool. Normally, this is not a great fruitful avenue to go down if you're thinking that you're going to put the weight of your analytics onto your RMS. Your RMS is not there for analytics. Your RMS is there to be this great robust data repository that lots of people can enter and lots of people can retain records, and you've got security protocols and CJIS considerations. When they're engineering that, they're not thinking analytics. Our IT department can automate our analytics. I think that this speaks to a lack of regard for the analysts professionally. This idea that just like, well, you're an analyst, but like, can't anybody who's kind of like tech savvy and tech smart do analyst things? That's not always the case. Sometimes it is. I've met cops, IT people who can be great analysts, but a lot of times when you're talking about an IT professional, you're talking about somebody who is really great with virtual machines and operating systems and servers and administrating licenses. It's not necessarily the analytical side of the house. Absolutely nobody on this stage has a computer science background. Actually, Courtney, you had a semester? One semester?
2.
Courtney survived 2 semesters of a computer science degree. She is the most technically competent out of all of us. Absolutely none of us went to computer science school. None of us have PhDs. Everything that we've learned, it's been on the job, YouTube a lot, Udemy. None of this is particularly mysteries of the universe difficult. We do work that can't be automated. That's almost never the case. Our RMS system won't allow us to do that. This is, I used to always say this is nonsense. There's actually one RMS vendor who I won't name, but if you really want to know who they are, come up and talk to me afterwards. There is one RMS vendor that will absolutely go to the mat trying to prevent you from getting back-end access to anything. Very oftentimes, there's like a superficial conversation that happened 15 years ago about data access, and somebody said, no, we can't do that. And so then it just kind of permeates the department. We can't access our data. In reality, if you get the right people in the room and you start to ask some of the right questions, typically we can resolve that issue with RMS vendors. I don't know where this comes from. Automation will create inaccuracy. It's exactly the opposite is true. If you automate a product that is accurate, it will be accurate forever unless something blows up on the back end. Every time you manually create a product, you are introducing possibilities for error with each iteration of that product. So typically something that is automated is going to be far more accurate. You don't have to be on the same RMS. None of the police departments that we're going to talk about today are on the same RMS. Some of them have the same vendor, but none of them are on the same server. None of their stuff is centralized already. Automation makes your own analytical unit scalable. So if you come by and you say to your analyst, hey, make me a map, okay, the next time you need a map, you have to go back to them. But if that analyst can automate the creation of that map through a dashboard or a model or something else, then you don't have to go back to them for that map again. You can just click the button, you can just check the product, and they can move on and go do something else, and they can scale the analytic unit up. We'll often give you more officers on the street. We've only got an hour, so I won't go into it, but I have a whole bunch of stories of going into fusion centers and real-time crime centers and analytic unit staff with sworn officers and automating them all back onto the street. A lot of them really hate me for that. I'm not super popular in a lot of areas. You can get timely information on demand, makes everything more accurate. And so Courtney's about to come up and tell the story of Blacksburg and the steps that they took to move to where they're at now. If you are a leader in the room and you're saying, okay, we don't have an analytic unit and we want to start one, or we've got one, but I feel like it could be better, here are 4 steps that we would encourage you to think about. One is decide to make this a priority. And that doesn't just mean, very often what we find is that the police chief went to a conference, they saw something cool about analytics, and then they went home and hired an analyst. And that's a really tough position to put an analyst in. There's a lot of groundwork that leadership can do before actually bringing an analyst in. Things like, what specifically do you want them to do? What police departments are out there doing what you want your analytics to look like? And that informs everything. That informs the type of analyst you hire. That informs the training that you put in front of them. That might inform the software that you buy. And it might inform the policy that you write. One of the other questions that we survey analysts on are, is there a policy that dictates how crime analysis works in your police department? And about 70-ish% say there's nothing, which is shocking to me because you all know police departments have policy written about what side of the chest the badge goes on and how to handcuff people and how your boots should be laced up. The fact that you've got analysts, pumping out these analytical products and there's no policy is some kind of shocking. Evaluate your operations. At the end of this presentation, I'm going to give you a really fun game you can play with your analysts. They will hate me at the end of that game, but a way to evaluate your operations in your department. Very often, one of the problems that we find is that IT, records, analytics, and maybe one or two other groups in the department are like their own little fiefdom. And there's like a department head who is the king, and everyone's built up their walls. And if you just hire an analyst and you say, go do analyst stuff, you are naturally setting them on a collision course for conflict with those people. And as a new, non-sworn person in a police department, that's a real crappy position to be in. So before you do anything with hiring analysts, starting analytics, or improving your analytics, put together a working group. Who are the people that you have relationships with in IT and records specifically, but there might be others. Bring them all together and say, what do we want to achieve? Why do we want to achieve it? In project management terms, I would say create a charter. As the head of the organization, we're going to do these things, here are the roles. So that way, whenever the analyst shows up to your IT department, it's like, hey, I need unfettered back-end access to all of your sensitive data. There's not somebody being like, well, now hold on, let's put the brakes. And then orient your analyst training. Again, if you're not a data analyst by trade, perhaps this is something that's somewhat foreign to you. I know that whenever I started as an analyst, I didn't have a clue. And like when they said, hey, you got a training budget, I spent it on the serial murder investigation class and the how we caught the Pablo Escobar case study stuff. But there are tons of resources you can reach out to say, hey, how do I actually set up a training plan for my analysts? What skill sets do they need to learn? And we're going to talk about some of those as well. The number one thing for us is understanding relational databases. I have a PowerPoint that I put together that explains relational databases drawn with crayons. It's not particularly sophisticated stuff. SQL, we talked about, is really foundational, and some of the other stuff you're going to see, macros, Excel formulas, report writers, basic mapping software, and Power BI. And so I'm going to cede the microphone to Courtney to talk about the Blacksburg story.
All right. So for those of you who don't know where Blacksburg is, we're going to start with that. We are in Southwest Virginia. The closest city to us is Roanoke, Virginia. I feel like if I pulled this room to see who has heard about Blacksburg, you're probably a college football fan, because we are home to Virginia Tech. One of the biggest things with Virginia Tech's history, April 16th, 2007, is still the most deadly shooting that has happened at a school. But we are 40 miles west of Roanoke. We're almost 20 square miles, about 45,000 residents. 50% of those are students that come and go 8 months of the year. Mayor, town council, town manager, and our department is actually a little bit outdated because now we're 69 sworn, and we still have those 15 civilians. Just a little bit of background, our organizational chart, two sides of the house. We have the services side, which is where every other civilian except for me is on, as well as school resource officers, the CID units on that side as well. I'm on the side with our patrol. So I report directly to the patrol captain, who reports to the deputy chief, reports to the chief. So my chain of command is not that lengthy. A little bit about our history. So when we talk, we go to PSN meetings as Blacksburg, and Roanoke sits there and talks about, oh, the shooting on this street, the shooting on this street, the shooting over here. We talk about our shooting, the shooting at the Hookah Lounge, that's what it's called. So the Hookah Lounge shooting happens in February of 2022, kind of shakes the community a little bit, especially with our history, anything like that, close to the school, gets a little shaky. And immediately after, our chief retires, we get a new chief, Chief Brewster, right in all the midst of this. So he comes in, and the first thing that he sees as he's coming in is a migration of crime from Roanoke. So we actually had a Roanoke police officer who left Roanoke, came back. He was a gang specialist in Roanoke. He's working for us now, and he's like identifying these people downtown in our town. He's like, that's so-and-so from this gang, that's so-and-so from this gang, people who should not be in Blacksburg, people who the college students of Blacksburg, they don't know who they're communicating with, they don't know who they're sitting next to at the bar, any of those things. So we're starting to see just an influx of crime. Also happening during this time is officers doing traffic stops downtown. They're getting four-cornered on traffic stops with individuals. There's lookouts on corners, things that Blacksburg, the good old town, has not seen before. So what he does next is reinstates the street crimes unit that had previously been put on hold during COVID. So they pulled 2 of our road officers. They're like, hey, you're street crimes. And then I'm approached by the street crimes officers, and they're like, hey, do you want to play analyst for us? And I'm like, absolutely. I had career aspirations to be an analyst, but that hadn't really worked out with approval process for the position. So I was just kind of working when they worked in the middle of the night, tracking things, type things up in Excel, trying to like faking it till you're making it type thing. Well, then come October of 22, under emergency consideration through town council, the position was reapproved by chief. So now I'm pulled from our fake fusion center back over, and I am now an analyst. So just like I mentioned before, to this point, we are, I don't want to say pretending, but I'm documenting things, I'm putting things in Excel, I'm saving things on this separate drive that just the street crimes units and command can see. We're trying to document, I'm communicating with Roanoke, trying to facilitate some collaboration there with their known gang members, trying to figure out everything with that. This is another presentation we do about how the crime analysts, regardless of where they sit in an organization, you're always going to have a dotted line to the chief, which is another aspect of collaboration that we speak to as well. So we're still faking it till we make it. And then January of 2023, I don't know how many chiefs are in this room or commanders. You guys are very good at forwarding emails. Very, very good at it. So my chief forwards an email to myself and captain of services at that time, because at this point I'm still on that services side of the house. He forwards this email and it's like, apply for CARB program through BJA, and there's no context to the email. It's just like, okay, I guess chief wants us to do this, so I did it. I apply with the help of my captain, and about 2 weeks later, we get an email back and they're like, okay, we need a Zoom meeting with your chief. You need to sign this document. We've been accepted. And I bring it to him and he's like, what is this? I'm like, you sent it to us. So January 2023, our engagement with the CARB program starts. So that is my first meeting with Amanda, and soon after Heather.
Oh, it's me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So as Courtney said, they had the opportunity. So huge shout out to the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and specifically John Markovic. If any of you have been around for a while, John's been in the field of crime analysis for a long time, but they really kind of took a leap of faith and said, hey, we'll give you guys some money to go and support crime analysis in small and rural police departments that have an executive level commitment to wanting to improve that, and then also being able to show an increase in violent or property crime. So that was awesome too. Generally, everything comes out of BJA has to be specifically focused on violence. So we had the opportunity also to look at the property crime aspect of it. We were able to provide assistance to departments that applied. And when I say small, we actually found it to be interesting. The ideal situation was to be less than 50 officers in the department. As we started receiving applications, we noticed that was a little bit challenging for some departments to be able to commit being involved in the CARB program for up to 6 months at a time. So while we do have some departments underneath the CARB program that fit the model that BJA envisioned in the first place, we have been working with the departments that have up to kind of like 115 officers, kind of being the max as well. We are with them actively engaged for up to 6 months at a time. What that looks like is once we onboard them, conducting capacity assessment with them, and then presenting them with a project plan. From there, the analysts and subject matter experts, such as Charlie, will be on site for up to 1 week at a time out of a month. The times that they are not on site, they are doing approximately 2 hours of virtual training with the person that has been identified as a training recipient. The thing that's been interesting about that as well is we have seen the training recipient come from all different parts of the agency. It's not just been one specific person. That is not something that we determine. We allow that to be something the agency determines as well. At the end of the 6-month engagement, we do not walk away with them. We can walk away from them. We continue to be involved and provide sustainability training. Amanda is still working with sites that she's had from her first initial cohorts. And we are allowing up to 40 hours of TTA to be provided under that sustainability training. We have 3 crime analysts that are assigned to the CAR program, and we have 9 subject matter experts. We are very fortunate to have these individuals. These are individuals that are receiving awards in the field of criminal justice, sit on boards, as Amanda does in the Carolinas, and then also plan conferences, attend conferences, and present. So this is the map. We are now have 8 cohorts. The first one kicked off with a pilot site who was generous enough for us to kind of figure our own plan out. That was in August of 22, and so we're very proud that by the time the grant ends, we will have worked with 25 departments directly. We have provided residual benefit to other departments, so Amanda and Charlie will be on site somewhere, and whatever training they may be doing, they will open it up to other agencies in the area to attend that training. I think Kennesaw was a good example. I think you guys had up to 25 additional analysts that showed up, so happy to support the kind of the regional approach that we see going on in Blacksburg and some of the other departments. Of the sites that we chose, 17 of them are police departments, 7 have been sheriff's office, and 1 is a school police. So very excited just to kick things off with the school police. It'll be a little bit of a different approach than we have done in the past. The other thing that we do is we bring the sites together for a regional meeting. This allows them to show off what they have learned and what they've been producing. It also allows our analysts and our subject matter experts to do some additional training that may have not been able to be provided previously, or to kind of do refresher training. Those are 2.5 days long. We cover the expenses for the sites to attend, that bringing the training recipient and then either their supervisor or chief or someone of the executive level to those. Some examples of training and technical assistance. So there are numerous associations out there providing support. Again, we very much encourage low to no cost. IACA, IALEA, these are just acronyms that I'm throwing out there. I'm more than happy to share those kind of links with you. The regional associations I think are absolutely fabulous. Again, just Amanda being involved in the Carolinas. Other places to look. Centers, so one of our colleagues by the name of Bill Wells, he is down at Sam Houston State. He has received funding from the state to offer free crime analysis training. They are just in the process of getting things off the ground, so their virtual is still kind of a small limited amount of courses. Amanda was able to take one of those early on. They're doing some really great stuff down there, so if someone is able to have some travel funds to get down to the area around Houston or around Austin, all of the training is free on that. So happy to share that contact information with you as well. Universities, always a good place to look to. Michigan State University has a very robust crime analysis department. Radford, where Amanda teaches, and then also Mount St. Mary's. Charlie's teaching, I think Amanda being involved with them also. There are several toolkits that are out there. BJA has one, COPS Office, PSP. Again, just kind of going back to anything that would be free and available to you all. Vendor-related things, obviously Esri has several things. And then highly encourage folks there. It's rather quiet at the moment, I'll be honest, but continue to check back. Several great grants that are out there from BJA, specifically one of them that I really like that was of interest to Blacksburg is encouraging field initiated. And that allows departments to be very creative in what they would like to approach. Those grants are usually pretty large, over 3 years. So just a couple of things to support the crime analysis field.
All right, so we're gonna go back to the Blacksburg story. Amanda's gonna explain where we were at when our engagement started.
So at this point, when I arrived at Blacksburg, I was there to conduct a capacity assessment in which I interviewed just about a representative from every rank within the command structure. During that interview, I talked a lot about how they were accessing their systems, how they were getting data out, and how they were producing products. This is an example recording using Southern Software RMS. Southern Software has been really great to work with. Their RMS product's fantastic. However, every single time you search, you have to enter those parameters one by one. You cannot save those searches. You cannot pull that data out into Excel. It gives you a variety of different PDF outputs. Obviously, from an analytical perspective, being given a variety of different PDFs is not the best starting point for creating analysis products. So one of the main primary things that I identified in their original report was that we needed to have direct access to that data. So we needed an ODBC connection to query that data. And we needed to create these different workflows that push that data to different platforms. So the next 6 months, my job was basically to facilitate and arrange for that to happen, provide training, and bring in other consultants to assist with that training and technical assistance. And this is just an example of what some of those PDFs look like. Again, kind of going back to what Charlie talked about in the beginning, an RMS system is not necessarily meant to provide analytical products. It is meant to capture data. And so the big takeaway here was trying to leverage that data in the system, how to get it out, and then how do we transform that to be actionable products that we can provide to supervisory staff.
All right, so I am on site with Amanda. We are kind of hiding away in the chief's conference room because they approved this position. The communication from the top down wasn't super great as to why I was reassigned and why this position was brought back, this and that. So I kind of hid away in the chief's conference room for several months, out of sight, out of mind, and I was kind of doing my own thing. So that's where a lot of our trainings took place. So Chief has called this big regional meeting. He called up all of his buddies, the sheriff, the other chief down in Christiansburg, Radford, DEA, state police. They all came. He provided them lunch, as he loves to do. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden we get tapped on the shoulder, and he's like, hey, you two, come in the room. So we're just kind of sitting in the back, and they're talking about how we need to start tracking these folks that have come from Roanoke that we don't know, they shouldn't be here, and we need to start communicating more. And a DEA guy by the name of Joe, he's great, kind of stands up, takes over, and hijacks Chief's meeting, and he's like, I have an idea. Everyone's gonna send all of their data to Courtney. And that's kind of how all of this started, was by a hijacked meeting. So then we start talking about, okay, what does that look like? So we asked Charlie and Amanda to draft us up a MOU for data sharing. So we already have MOUs in place for cross-jurisdictional lines, arrest powers, and all of those, pursuit policies, all of those are already in place, but there's nothing about data. So they draft that up, our town attorney takes a look at it, and they're like, yeah, this is cool. And Chief hands those out again to his little buddies. They all sign them, they get them back, and they're like, okay, now we have these signed pieces of paper, what does that look like? So then we start building things. During this point, our car engagement, I think we had maybe a month left at this point. So we have set into place some of the things we're gonna demo for you here in a minute. We have a couple tools up and running, and then that grant ends. So we're like, what are we gonna do next? How do we continue this process? So to the point that we had it, we had Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, Christiansburg Police Department, ourselves, and Virginia Tech Police Department. So we have this system integrating all of that data all together. Then I was lucky enough to get contacted or have contacts through PSN through Heather. We attend those meetings, and they're like, oh, we can give you more money to build what you're continuing to do, because it's only gonna benefit the rest of the state at this point. If you can build data in the black hole that is everything in Southwest Virginia, communication just kind of falls off the wall at a certain point. They give us 20 grand, and we were able to continue what we had started. So Charlie comes back, and we build this model.
So initially, phase one of this project that did happen under the CARD program was basically 3 different RMS systems were integrated. They all happened to be through Southern Software, but that was just kind of a luck of the draw. Essentially what we did was we established ODBC connections to each of those 3 agencies, and then we brought that data in through their platform called Ad Hoc. It's just basically how they bring data in through Microsoft Access. So we were able to create different SQL queries to bring that data down, and all of that was stored at the time on Courtney's laptop in investigation. So everything was a local model bringing in from those 3 agencies, and then we were basically matching column names to each other. So incident number got matched to incident number, we added a source field and so forth, and then that was the basis for some of the early products.
Like I said, we get 20 grand through Virginia State ARPA funds, And that kind of transformed into this model.
So that phase one model is how we train data analysts or crime analysts 99% of the time. Pull a little section of data down to your personal computer and do a thing. That's fine whenever you're working with small data, but as you start to bring in entire cities' data volume, that's going to scale, and working off of a single computer is really difficult. In addition, it also locks Courtney in kind of as a bottleneck, and what we really want eventually is for everybody to be able to access this data and ask basic questions of the data and get answers. That's what a data-driven policing agency really looks like. So as step one of that transition, we set up a server, which I've since called the Death Star. It's not yet fully operational, but we were then able to move all of those pipelines to dumping that onto a server that the city of Blacksburg owns. And now whenever Courtney wants to access that stuff, she logs into the server, and that's where we build things, and it becomes a bit more scalable.
So how I normally explain it to people who are much less smarter than the people in this room, what I do on a daily basis is on my laptop, I have a VPN for each agency. So I log into that VPN, it goes in there, I just click a button, it's all automated, and it pulls the data to a centralized database. So I do that for each agency, and now I have live up-to-date data for each agency. So if yesterday something got squashed and the code section changed, or the crime type changed, or maybe it was erased from our RMS for whatever reason, juvenile, whatever, it's gone. It's live up to date from the time I run it. And then it's all in one centralized location that I can play with in a mutual location where there's no vendors who don't like this, or this RMS doesn't like this CAD, all of that. So then Chief calls another meeting of his buddies. This one's a little bit bigger. At this point, we have something to show them. So we stand up and we present what we're doing, what we're building. And there was Pulaski County Sheriff Office actually had gotten a copy of our MOU from their buddies, the town of Pulaski, and they came with it signed. They brought it to our meeting. They're like, we want to do this. If it's okay, can your chief sign this piece of paper? So that was pretty cool to see. So at this point, we have ourselves, Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, Giles County Sheriff's Office, Town of Pulaski, Pulaski County Sheriff's Office, Radford University, City of Radford, Virginia Tech, and the town of Dublin, I believe is everyone that we're kind of playing ball with right now. We actually just had a meeting a couple weeks ago with the town of Salem, which is just outside of Roanoke. We're trying to make friends, a little bit harder with Roanoke to try to get all of their big data over there with all their shootings and all the big crime. But we'll see if we can play with the big boys. And then to this point, we are applying for grants. That $20,000 only gets you so far. We're trying to apply for more money. That way we can bring back Charlie, Amanda, other people in the field to continue to grow this. We actually had a meeting not that long ago as well with someone from the Attorney General's office who's like, who has seen this? And I was like, well, I talk about it all the time when I do presentations and I travel. And he's like, the governor needs to see this. So he said that our Virginia State governor wanted this and he was told no. So he was sitting in my chief's office with me and he was like, wait, you did this under a free training grant and $20,000, you've gotten this. He was like, I spent millions and I was told no. I was like, well, you know, Blacksburg's a special place and we were able to make it happen. So as Charlie kind of alluded to, the big goal, the big picture goal is eventually right now I'm the one who answers the questions. I query the information. So Pulaski calls me, I answer their question. So-and-so calls me, I answer their question. It's automated, it's all in one space. I can still query that answer very quickly. But the idea would be all of those officers from all of those different organizations, the people who act as their analysts or their proxies, can ask those same questions on their own, and I'm not the one that's having to answer the phone calls in the middle of the night. Everyone can ask their own questions. All right, so as we've kind of alluded to already, a crime analyst, and I think you guys would agree with this, never just does analytics. They're normally kind of pulled in a bunch of different directions. So myself, I support command, patrol, the detectives. I train my officers on what I can and can't do, how long things should take, what I do and what I don't do. Towards the beginning, my street crimes officers, particularly, I'll call him out because he knows I will. He was like, oh, can you make a copy of this for me? No, I will not. No. I also do our back-facing social media and our front-facing social media, even though Amanda has told me to give that up for quite some time. I have not yet. I support records and our Fusion Center. Here's a couple of different products that we produce on daily, monthly, weekly basis. Here's an offender workup. It was for a juvenile who was breaking into homes, so we did a deep dive on him. Standard bulletins for officer safety, requests for information. This is now automated. It's a repeat incident report, so it looks at the previous 28 days, looking at calls for service in our CAD system and seeing where we repeated addresses, like it did Delta shift and Charlie shift go to the same address 2 times in 1 week, but they didn't talk to each other because they never see each other, and why was all 4 of those calls closed with options advised. Maybe we need to level up our response and do something different to prevent something further from either escalating or happening again. I produced that product not only for Blacksburg, but I have the ability to do that for Virginia Tech, Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, Christiansburg, and City of Bradford. Other pattern products, hot settings, series. We are able to deep dive under cars engagement and doing some nuisance abatement. We have a taco bar downtown. If you guys ever visit, please don't visit there specifically. So we were able to look into financial backgrounds, owners' backgrounds, criminal history backgrounds, eventually present it to town management. Virginia ABC did come in and take over that case, and they're kind of have a little bit more power to hit them harder with the different sanctions than we could. But that was something that we were able to do under cars engagement as well. One of the things that Amanda helped us build was a infographic for crime. So right now we did repurpose this product. It was intended to be on our social media to let people know on a monthly basis what we were seeing, but instead we are using it for our Citizens Advisory Board. They get a monthly report and we do use these infographics there. Some of our collaboration that we had internally, if you want to speak about Ingrid, you're more than welcome to.
Sorry.
So our town GIS manager in our department was the one who was able to give us ARC Pro licenses, because they already just had extra ones, and ARC Viewer accounts. So with that, we're able to create dashboards in ArcGIS that the officers can log into.
So as part of that daily workflow that Courtney has, when she goes into each VPN and she pushes for the macro to run and pulls that data down as a local copy, there's also a local copy that is placed on a shared drive with the GIS coordinator for the town of Blacksburg. So from there, that then goes through its own ARC model. It gets published into ARC Online, and then through ARC Viewer licenses that were distributed to supervisors and some of the patrol shifts, they're able to view this dashboard in essentially daily time. So it's not real time, it is off of that daily push, but she was able to help us automate that process once we were able to clean that data and provide it to her.
So this is just a map of anything that an officer might have missed. They can filter it down the last week, the last month, the last year, property crime, violent crime, and just see what's going on as a general overview.
And then beyond some of the Power BI dashboards that we'll show here in a few minutes, this was kind of pre the Power BI era. In that local copy that then feeds over to Excel, where we have a variety of different formulas that automate the production of these crime statistics. So these are produced on a weekly and a bi-weekly basis. All of their NIBRS Group A, Group B crime statistics are all automated, along with a series of rolling timelines. There's a separate Excel workbook for each agency that is in the data sharing agreement. So each of those separate agencies also receive one of these crime stat packets every Monday. So this is all based on the same thing because we have kind of this column matching happening. These templates are usable for each of those agencies.
Here is one of the biggest things that we were able to accomplish under CAR and then that next engagement under that PSN money. So this is an offender workup in a link chart that's all automated. So I go in, I type in who's the requesting officer, that way there's a level of accountability that's printed on each sheet. I type in the person I'm looking for. I note that they are found in the Montgomery County RMS, the Radford RMS, and our own RMS. I match up the socials, make sure it's who we're looking for. I select it, I save it. And then this video is in real time, so I think we're at about maybe 30 seconds. I have a full 7-page PDF with every interaction they've had in those 3 different jurisdictions, with every time they were a victim, an offender, other involved, any vehicles they've ever been noted to be having, and the narratives from each RMS report. So then we did that under car, and then we took it one step further under that PSN money, and we're like, okay, let's do a timeline. So this is where we spent those $80. I think it might have been 120. I think he downplayed it just a little bit. But we paid for
Note Excel.
Note Excel, which is an extension in Microsoft Excel that does an automated timeline. Same thing, the query's already built in here. I go in, I save the edge list, I open Excel with the add-on in there, click a couple buttons. Change a couple settings. And there we go. We have a 2 degree link chart for the offender that was in interest. And again, all of that was in real time. I did that, I video recorded it. I think we're less than 2 minutes. I have a timeline for that detective that just gave me a name for any of those agencies. I ran it and I can give it to them. One of the things that Amanda taught me under our engagement is sometimes officers get super confident and they're like, oh, we want everything we want on this person. And then you spend all this time and you build this packet and then you hand it to them and they don't even look at it because they've already moved on, but they didn't communicate that with you. So this is an easy, take a look at this first and then we'll deep dive after.
So for any of those in the room that utilize Microsoft Access, essentially the background of this product is just a series of queries that pull those connections. So if a person is on a report or is on a crash report with another name, we're going to pull all of those, and then we do another degree search on all of those individuals. Then the entity resolution process is where you can match individuals together. So if we have John Smith and Jonathan Smith with the same date of birth, all within kind of this region, you can identify those as the same individual so that they're going to come back on that same product. You don't have to search it over and over again. The benefit of this is that it takes away having to call those other agencies and request, can I get a report on this? Can I get a report on that? Some of the agencies in the region do use links, but there is a delay. This is going to be a little bit more up to date, and then it's all one comprehensive PDF. That second part of the workflow is just a separate macro that generates that edge list that is brought into here. Essentially, the idea is that, again, we want to hopefully move this to the cloud so that there can be other users, but Courtney's able to produce these on demand when those requests come in.
This is the Power BI dashboard that we spoke of. This is just one of them. So this has Blacksburg's data, Radford City's data, Montgomery County Sheriff's Office data, and Giles County data at this point. So this is just an overview of offenses, day of week, time of day, the numbers of what one is our heavy hitter at the current moment, total offenses when you click one, so this is disorderly conduct, public intoxications, and then it just gives a breakdown of those individual crimes. You can filter it down and look at the region as a whole, or you can just look at that individual department.
This is not like a canned product that you would buy from a vendor. We started with a blank slate. We trained Courtney up on Power BI. And so one of the advantages to this, as opposed to something that you might buy from an RMS, is that if all of this was a chief or a lieutenant or some officer said, I want a graph here and I want the color to be blue and I want a map here, and when I click on it, I want to do the following things. Well, with just a couple of weeks of training, Courtney is now able of doing all of that customization. So whenever an officer comes to her now and says, I want to see XYZ information, she can build that dashboard, she can push it to them, and then it's fully automated. They never have to come back to her again for that.
So that previous one looked at RMS data, this one looks at CAD data. So here I can look at anyone that we share a CAD with, so that's not only ourselves, Montgomery County, Christiansburg, Virginia Tech Police Department, but also their fire and EMS as well. So I can select who I want to look at, maybe even the officer, break it down another level. I can see where they're responding to their calls. Are they only doing traffic stops at that one place right by that one, gas station at 2 a.m.? When are they answering their calls? How long is their call taking? Is their traffic stops maybe too short, or maybe we need to work on shortening them a little bit more? All of that information is here, and you can filter it all. One of the bigger problems that we had with extra patrols is they were lasting about 4 seconds on average. And they were doing their job, they were just telling dispatch not at the appropriate time, not when they started and when they finished. They would just do the extra patrol, and then they would tell dispatch to open it and close it. So that's something that we were able to notify command about, and they were able to disseminate that down and kind of correct that problem.
And then just for a reference point, so everything up until this point is based on some of those ODBC connections. We did run into some issues with the county CAD system. It is hosted by the vendor that shall not be named. So we do not have a live connection to their server. So instead what happens is there's basically a weekly poll that has manually generated, then that is appended into the data set that then feeds this specific Power BI dashboard. So that one is not as automated, but the takeaway there is that if you do have issues getting data out of your system, there sometimes still is a workaround. It may not be real time or daily, but there typically still is a process that can at least speed up some of these workflows from what you have now.
And this is one that kind of Charlie alluded to with that training that they provided me. Those two other dashboards they did build, with my input, with Chief's input. This one I made all by myself with their training. This is also the one that's going to get me in the most trouble. So I can select the officers that are currently on a shift, and I can see who's carrying the workload of those calls, particular calls, how long they're taking on those calls, and all of that.
The groans from the room are the best part.
And
do you have any licensing issues with Power BI, and how are you distributing that out, if you don't mind me asking?
that's what I was actually going to get to. So right now, they're just on my computer, and Chief will come sit down with me, or I will bring my laptop to him. We did just switch to Office 365. So depending on the degree of license that was purchased, it comes with it. If not, it's $10 a month per user. So my idea is that I will have because once you get the license, you can publish. So right now they're not published, they're just there. I will get one, command will each get one, and then I think every shift, maybe 2 licenses per is what we kind of discussed. The only holdup right now is we don't know if the police department is supposed to pay the $10 a month or if technology is supposed to pay the $10 a month. But that is the plan. We also plan on publishing it, what I'm about to show you.
So this is a comprehensive SharePoint site. This is still in a draft mode. All of this is put into the current grant application that includes funding for Power BI licenses as well as external SharePoint users. The intention is to be able to integrate all of these products into here. Right now it's Blacksburg facing only, but the idea is for all of these analytical products to be pushed there, for those dashboards to be integrated, as well as those viewer licenses. Again, this is somewhat of a work in progress, but this is, again, included in that grant application.
So on this website that eventually the other agencies would have access to, those Power BI dashboards could be published and they could interact with them there without breaking them, which is my biggest fear, is that an officer is going to touch it and they're going to hurt it. But here, all of our bulletins would go in here, all of those stats would go in here, the weekly breakdowns, all of that would be in one centralized place, and it's all searchable. I don't know if you guys went to that flock presentation earlier today, but this is keyword as well, so it reads all the documents you put in. So if an officer is like, what was that one bulletin about a red truck? They can type in red truck, it would pull up those bulletins, and then they can read right there in their MDT or on their phone, and they can get that information centralized.
Want to switch back? Okay. All right, so what are some of the takeaways from all of this for leadership? Step number 1 is assess your unit. And so I created this little matrix here for non-technical police administrators to have some idea of what they might be able to expect from their analytical unit and how to evaluate their current operations. So analyst synergy. If you've got multiple analysts, one of the best ways that you can evaluate their operations is to separate them all and make them give you some sort of answer. The most devious thing I've ever done in my entire life, when I was working at Cincinnati PD, we had 7 or 8 analysts. They all worked in different offices. They all used different tools. They all had different processes. And I was trying to explain how that's a problem. And so my chief at the time kind of said, prove it. And so I posed as a reporter and I filed 6 different FOIA requests, routed them to the analysts, and I just asked something really basic. I was like, how many robberies have there been each of the past 5 years in the city? And what do you think we got? We got 6 different sets of answers, to say nothing of the fact that we got them represented 6 different ways. Sometimes we got a bar chart, some we got a line chart, different color schemes or whatever. And so analyst synergy really speaks to, are all of your analysts able to provide identical answers in similar time frames and similar formats? If analytics is kind of like trying to cross an ocean, if everyone's in their own little boat using their own little desktop tools off on their own little silo, you'll get some people who will get there fast, some people whose ships are going to sink. But what we did whenever we created this cohesive data model and put all this automation in place was we created synergy. And so now they could bring on an additional analyst. All of that sort of background work is in place for them, and now they all get there at the same time. Data leveraged. If you are getting complaints that there's too much data, then you definitely need to invest in some training and some things like SQL, some big data tools. Probably a lot of your stuff is manual. Data speed, this is probably the biggest one. And certain professions are worse about it than others. I don't know what it is about intelligence analysts, but they have like this self-loathing badge of honor system where it's like, it took me 3 months to make this link chart. If you are asking them to create an analytic product and you're getting answers back in 4 or 5 days for something like patterns, trends, it's probably time to start thinking about some sort of automation or integration strategy. And then next generation analytics, and really this speaks to most of the time when we train analysts in any arena, in business, in healthcare, we're almost always talking about BI. Can you give us numbers? Can you give us patterns? Can you give us trends? Can your analyst go a little bit further than that and actually analyze networks? Can you look at who is connected to who? How do all of these scenes connect? How do these data sets connect? Can you leverage LPR and NIBIN data and put a picture together to add value to NIBIN leads or other investigative leads, things like that. And so we are right at our time. We got a few minutes for questions, but we're going to throw all of our LinkedIns up there. You're welcome to QR code all of us and connect. And if anybody has any questions, we'll give you a minute or two. Yeah.
You all mentioned that you use SharePoint, or that's what you're planning to use with your profile for sharing. Do you have any serious concerns with using SharePoint for that information? Because I'm at the University of Cincinnati, and we thought about using SharePoint as well, but then there were all these red flags that people said it's not CJIS compliant.
So we've been advised that it was CJIS compliant, that some things depended upon the protocol for the outside users. So the goal is that most of the departments within the region are also Microsoft organizations, and so they will use their current credentials in order to join the website. So then if they leave their current agency, their credentials would be shut down, which would automatically remove them from the shared page as well.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Do you have anything in place for real-time pattern recognition?
Real-time what recognition?
Pattern recognition?
Pattern recognition. So the word real-time is real kind of dicey. So when we create this model, basically on the back end of all of that Power BI, we've had to tell all of these different systems how to transform columns, how to transform tables, dump them all in the same place. And so whenever she goes through and she clicks that button, not only are we copying data in, but then we've also built a model wherein it has to find connections between all of those objects. All of that is to say that when data goes into your RMS, even if we right then clicked go on all of this, there's still a delay. And so I like to say near real time, because we can set those themselves up to be automated as well, but there is like a processing delay. But like if you wanted information that was every hour,
Yeah,
something like that.
If you're getting CAD data from all these different agencies, can you set up like an hourly incident report that would recognize patterns? Like
Yeah, absolutely.
So-
burglaries?
Yes. So as an example, one of our other sites is Kennesaw, Georgia, outside Atlanta. Through Windows Task Scheduler, we've actually automated their data push. We also then have a model in Arc Pro that populates all of that, those data points into the map, and then we have some different symbology filters. So basically theirs runs, I think, twice a day. They can see all of their burglaries mapped together on one map. They've got a secondary map for vehicle thefts and so forth. So that has kind of assisted, but again, it's kind of near real time, not exactly real time.
Do you have anything like where you're looking at suspect vehicles and where they may have plotted on different LPRs, like during a certain time frame?
We don't have the LPR data integrated at this point, but we are working with another agency right now on a complex offender dashboard. So when you put up one name, it'll show you their known addresses, their known vehicles. It doesn't pull in the LPR data. It is strictly pulling in their RMS and CAD.
I don't think that we've worked with an agency that has LPR data yet. Yeah. But in theory, you could, absolutely. Yeah. if that was all database somewhere, that could just be part of your data pull. And then whenever you pull up that vehicle, it can say, and we've seen it here in the past 48 hours or whatever.
Because we're pulling in the known vehicle, like the master vehicle index from the RMS system.
Right.
So it would be very similar.
I like where your head's at.
Right.
Anyone else?
Can I say anything? I want to acknowledge that we also have another car site in here, so would you like
Yeah,
to
you
stand
guys
up, Chief?
stand up.
Yeah, stand
Everybody
up,
look
please.
towards the center of the room. The three
So
individuals. This is Beaufort,
yes.
South Carolina.
Yes, Chief Price and 2 analysts. So thanks for joining the session with us. You guys have anything
Sure.
to say, offer?
About a year ago, we came to this very conference, and we had just spent 3 months analyzing our shots fired calls. And shocker, it was around all the apartment complexes that we started the project. But every time we did that analysis, it came up different. And 3 months to do a couple years worth of shots fired, I was like, there's got to be an easier way, right? This is your easier way. We now have one-touch analytics that the officers have on their smartphones and then they can get data to. I am so proud of you guys, and you have changed our police department and the data-driven policing that we do. So if you have any questions, please ask. We have spent a little bit more because we had to buy some ARCO licenses, but essentially they are correct. It was very cost-effective. I think our cost right now is somewhere at $2,400, but only because of the ARCO licenses we didn't have. So it's very impressive. They really do. You asked about if they can, get down to the symbols and alert you. Absolutely. So we actually have a thing called Safe Living Beaufort. With their help and the officers' help and all the work that's been done, we have gotten crimes in our apartment complexes reduced by hundreds of percents. Hundreds of percents because of their identification and the efforts of the officers. So thank you.
Thank you. Gosh, I'm blushing. I do want to give one quick shameless plug. So if you're interested in learning some of this stuff, Amanda and I have collaborated on a couple of different academic programs to teach people. And so we are actually starting in the next couple of weeks an 8-week boot camp that is for working law enforcement officers at Mount St. Mary's University. It is synchronous, it's online. We give a discount for anybody who's currently working in the field. It's not free. But by all means, shoot me or Amanda an email and we'll get you registered. And then this fall, we're actually, that one class is going to kind of cover 4 or 5 different topics really quickly. This fall, we're launching a certificate program where we're taking each of those topics and making it its own class. So if you want to learn more about SQL, how to navigate a relational database, and you want to do all of that in the context of the databases that law enforcement work with, CAD, RMS, things like that, and create CompStat dashboards and paginated reports and link analysis and things of that nature, by all means shoot us an email and we will get you registered. But
Okay, we're done.
we're done? All right, well thank you all so
Thanks,
much
you
for
guys.
coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you out in the hall with some snacks.